Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about perfectionism. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how do you balance between perfectionism and pragmatism when creating software solutions? Well, that is a pretty simple thing for me these days actually. So basically the way that I've found that I can balance perfectionism versus pragmatism is with this one question: will this work? Now that sounds stupidly obviously simple, but just hear me out. When I say will this work, it basically applies to any situation wherever you are, where if you are trying to find that sweet spot between being pragmatic and a perfectionist, you should always because you're always facing that challenge between where perfectionism is trying to make a solution that is not only very performant, but it's also future proof, it's following all the best practices, it's trying to be elegant, so forth and so forth. Pragmatism pulls in the way of, can I ship this really quickly? And, you know, do I have to do a lot of work, etc. So usually pragmatism is about speed at the cost of all these other things. Quality, speed versus quality. That's usually the way that you think about it. And the way that I find that sweet spot is, as I said, will this work under all circumstances? Well, under all circumstances is a strong way of putting it, but just hear me out. The reason why I want that question to always be on the lips of all my software developers and myself is because I don't really care if this software is the best, like this code that I wrote is the best code that was ever written, because that's not my goal. My goal is to have this working under all circumstances. And the better I am at writing software, the simpler I can make that thing happen. Basically, this is the difference between, I argue, a philosopher and like a real professional, where a philosopher will complicate, like they will create quote unquote perfect code, but with extreme complexity just to get something to work. So they make, as I've said before, they don't fully understand the problem. They're not applying the solution doesn't stand in proportion to the problem. So they overcomplicate the problem, and they do get it to work, but it's not like it's more code than just getting to that sweet spot. As I've said, I've mentioned that a few times. Like, imagine that the goal is not to if the goal is to fill a glass of water just to the brim, then an over engineer will fill the glass so it overflows. The true professional will try to fill it just so, to the exact point where the glass is fully filled. That is the perfect amount of investment that you should make. And as I said, that level is, will this work under 100 based on whatever specifications we have? That's the goal. The goal is like that's what I coach the mid-levels to. Your goal is not to write sophisticated software. The only reason you know about sophisticated software is so that when you have a problem where answering that question, will this always work? And the only way to say yes is to apply those advanced patterns. That's the time you use it. But many people, that's why you are a philosopher, they apply sophisticated solutions when you don't actually have to invest so much. And you do that not because the code is, not going to work. It is because of you. You want this. And so the other on the other spectrum, you have the pragmatist who just wants things to go as quickly as possible. And here is where usually testing and things like that come in. And I have tons of conversations with different developers about this as well, to question testing. Oh, is that really necessary? And I go, my question is very simple. Will this work 100% of the time? Can you guarantee me that it's going to work? And every day of the week, 24 hours a day, regardless of what's going on. And if they're naive, they will say yes. And I go, how do you know? Because as far as I usually point to the backlog, because last I checked, we do have quite a few bugs and quite a few regressions, and basically every time we ship something, something is breaking. So clearly, you're lying when you're saying that this is always going to work. And that's the reason why testing is, as I said, like it's not a question of that you need test. The question is to what degree do you need to test something, which is the reason why I say that writing good tests is an art form. I was really happy to talk to a junior developer the other day. I've never heard a person who was so masterfully able to explain at least my thoughts on how to do testing, where he should basically explain that, well, testing is not just about arbitrarily testing methods and functions and stuff like that, because if you do it poorly, then the test isn't really relevant. It doesn't test anything meaningful, and then the system is still going to break. Exactly. That's exactly it. The average software developer is shite at writing unit tests, or it doesn't matter which test this is. That's why I ask people, like the seniors are usually getting questions about, what testing strategy are you going to apply? Because as I said, the goal is for you to ship as quickly as possible while still being able to say, yes, this will always work. And that's the balancing act. And that's why you learn that when you really get to know how to ship software in a reliable fashion. You know what tests are relevant for what situation, at what level of the testing pyramid. If you've heard about that, that's a very good thing for you to know. Is this a situation where a unit test is best to make sure that it works? Is it better to use an integration test? Should you use an end-to-end test? Should you do how do you approach figuring out if this feature you're going to ship right now is always working? The whole point is to answer that question, because if you can say that, yeah, this is the fastest I can make this, in other words, like I can ship this as fast as possible, but I have to do these things, either with the code, like the code has to be structured in a certain way so that it is testable, or it has to be written in a certain architecture or something, because otherwise it becomes difficult, increasingly more difficult for us to make sure that it works. These are the topics that I think about, and then of course, like what level of testing do I need to make sure that this is always working? If you can be honest enough as a professional to say that I have reached that point, as I said, the brim of the glass, I have just done so much that I can guarantee that this fills the requirements, and I'm pretty damn sure that I've had the right level of testing. Not too much. I'm not testing like every single thing, things that are irrelevant or so forth. Just the stuff that really makes sure that if I ship this on a Friday night, just before I'm going to go and put on my nice clothes and go out and doing after work, I could ship that to production, and I know that, yeah, it's going to work. If you can reach that level, then you found the perfect balance. So what I want you to take away from this is that the balance between perfectionism and pragmatism is the understanding that the person who is over-engineering is overfilling the glass. You're basically trying to make the code perfect, not because it needs to be perfect, but because you want it to be perfect. It's an emotional thing for you. And that is basically something that you should and hopefully will mature out of, because the real master software developers understand that, as I said, it's the same thing as like just, if I pay you to work 8 hours and then you put in 20 hours, you're not going to get paid for more. You're not adding value. There's no point in it. Or if you run a restaurant, then you come in with twice or 3 times the food for every meal that people order from you. They're still an average person. They're not going to be able to eat all of that stuff, and you're probably going to go out of business because you're putting in so much. You're putting in more resources and effort into something that is not necessary. You're putting in more, as I said, than what you're getting at. Or if you buy a supercomputer when you're basically just playing small Tetris games or something like that, you're not getting anything back. And the pragmatism, the ones that swing too far, is the people who do really hacky solutions. Everything is sort of buggy and they just try to optimize for speed all the time. And as I said, the perfect sweet spot is to ask, will this work under all circumstances? If you feel that, yeah, I'm not even a little bit concerned that this thing is not going to work, that's your sweet spot right there. Don't go higher than that. But be honest with yourself as well. If you see that you have bugs all the time, you see that sort of empirically, actually things are breaking on a fairly regular basis, then you need to scale up the testing so that you can say with certainty that everything that you ship will continue working. And that sounds simple, but I promise you guys, you will spend many years and learn tons of different patterns and systems of testing and so forth. Like, guys, this is basically the whole career, for every situation that you find yourself in, to find the answer to where do I need to put the needle exactly to know that I've just shipped enough code to fill the requirements, and I've just added exactly the amount of testing so that I feel confident that we moved at the highest speed that we could, but the thing is still also going to work. I didn't compromise. I put it just so at the top of the glass. Have a great day.